Ladies and gentlemen, hello.
Hello,
I'm
we can
Mahdi
hear you.
Khaleghi from Iran. I'm a PhD candidate in Science and Technology Policy at University of Tehran and a researcher in Center for Research in Technology and Innovation Management in Complex Industrial Systems or CRITIMICS at Sharif University of Technology. We have here on my beside my dear supervisor, Dr. Mohammad Reza Arasti, who is the founder and head of CRITIMICS, and also one of my colleagues, Mr. Majid Dehkhan. Okay, let's start my presentation, which has been derivated from my PhD thesis. The title of this presentation is Analyzing Organizational Capabilities as Systems, a Conceptual Framework. The strategy literature believes that a firm's success depends on the congruence between its portfolio of activities and its external opportunities, as well as the quality of performing such set of activities. Resource-based view of the firm, or RBV, has a very important stand within this literature, has acknowledged the important role of organizational capabilities, or OCs, in explaining how good firms can perform their activities and how the difference in performing similar activities results in heterogeneity between firms. A distinction is generally made between operational capabilities and dynamic capabilities so that the former enables firms to perform their ongoing task of making a living, while the latter concerns building, integrating, or reconfiguring operational capabilities. This paper only deals with operational capabilities. In recent decades, a large body of literature has been produced on the nature and importance of firms' capabilities within RBV strand. Despite years of development and many theoretical contributions, the conceptualization, operationalization, and application of RBV has remained problematic. One aspect of the literature that still seems to be unsettled is the confusion over the definition of this concept. In general, capabilities refer to the organization's potential for carrying out a specific activity or set of activities, but there's no consensus on OC's definition in the literature. For the purpose of this paper, we define an organizational capability, or OC, as an actual synthesis of organizational assets which allows for performing some specific activities. As most sciences or subfields in their early stages of development begin at some aggregate level of analysis, the main body of RBV literature has dealt with OC at macro level too. This body considers OCs as a black box, which is the output of organizational learning process. Organizational learning process believed to be self-improving. So, in order to improve OCs, it seems sufficient to just control limiting factors in the environment. Scientific reduction, as the opposite approach, believes that advancing the understanding of particular phenomena and intern a field thus may require expanding theoretical and empirical work to encompass multi-level effects, including micro-level ones. In line with this approach, it's just recently that a small portion of researchers within RBV tried to identify micro-foundations of OCs at macro level. This paper also tries to shape a micro-level understanding of organizational capabilities using a system metaphor. This idea rose from the similarity between definitions of organizational capabilities and systems. Systems are defined as a set of entities and their relationships whose functionality is greater than the sum of the individual entities. In our aforementioned definition of OCs, a synthesis of organizational assets as a set of entities which their relationship makes performing some activities possible for the firm, which are not possible in such a way otherwise. So it seems that considering organizational capabilities as systems and doing system analysis at micro level bears fruit. Systems simultaneously have the characteristics of form and function. Form is what the system is, and function is what the system does. System science considers both domains for system analysis. Discrete parts of related literatures have also analyzed OCs in both forms and function domains. we first try to identify microelements of OCs in the function domain as well as their interactions. Thereafter, OCs are decomposed in the form domain while their interactions are also considered. Finally, we will link those two domains to show how the system integrates to a whole, which enables the firm for doing specific activities. Function domain deals with what a capability can perform, i.e. activities. For analyzing an OC in the functional domain, it should get decomposed into its underlying subactivities first. Each subactivity may again be decomposed to its lower layer subactivities. This decomposition process could be continued until we reach to simplest task in the lowest layer. Some affiliated literatures has analyzed OCs in the function domain. For example, when complex product systems literature, or COPS, breaks system integration mega capability into functional, project, and strategic management subcapabilities, analysis has been done in function domain. Again, when innovation studies consider idea generation, design and development, implementation, and commercialization as major subcapabilities of innovation capability, they are speaking in function domain. For many of today's products with a systemic nature, the design and development subactivity itself could be broken into system level and component level design subactivities. The figure here proposes such decomposition for innovation capability and also for its design and development subactivity into its second layer. Afterward, the interactions of micro-level subactivities could be considered. These interactions, which occur through a process or routine, then integrate into a whole capability which allows the firm for doing a specific set of activities. This table illustrates those interactions for a typical OC at its first level of decomposition in function domain using design structure matrix or DSM, which is widely accepted in system science for presenting interactions in a system. The red bold lines in this figure show the system boundary. The system receives inputs from its environment and acts upon the operand to change the operand, while there would be some other outputs or byproducts too. Just to provide an example, this table decomposes innovation capability in the function domain to its first level subactivities. As you can see, budget is an example of inputs to the system. Previous product is the system's operand, which is changed to innovated product as the goal of the system. Idea generation, design and development, implementation, and commercialization are subactivities of innovation activity. The output of idea generation subactivity goes to design and development. Implementation subactivity receives the output of design and development and sends its output to commercialization subactivity. Job satisfaction may improve as the system's byproduct too. The form domain deals with what the system is. In regard of microelements of OCs in the form domain, related literature has provided a wide list. Leonard Barton, Parahalad and Hamel, as well as Lal, suggest that skills and knowledge bases are at the core of capabilities. The range of microelements in the literature is in fact broader than merely organization and technical elements, and for example includes important personal characteristics of individuals, especially managers. Christiansen and Kaufman have emphasized on resources, processes, and priorities in this regard. Feline et al. Has pointed to individuals, processes, and structures as three main categories of microelements. Porter and Reger imply to knowledge, hardware, and skills while talking about technological capabilities. Such a long list may be beneficial as all elements that might be important to the system should be initially identified through a holistic thinking. The next issue that the system thinker faces is focus. It means that from the wide list of microelements from the literature, some should be considered inside the system boundary as the main microelements of OCs, while some others should be considered as accompanying systems and some others would be better to place in use context. This classification depends on the question at hand, but some general guidelines seems recommendable. This paper limits itself with managerial implications and tries to provide a better understanding of OCs as a basis for their improvement plans. So, it may be a good idea to separate those elements under managerial control within the firm from those which are placed in external environment such as national infrastructures. Those external elements could be dealt with as external opportunities in use context. Although some other elements, such as organizational culture, are internal to the firm, they are very hard to control, at least in short term. And they also are not attributable to any specific capability. So they could be considered as accompanying systems in the whole system. Strategy literature has also acknowledged that OCs perform within an organizational context. So we adopt knowledge, skills, and tools from strategy literature as general microelements of capabilities in form domain. Microelements of the form domain interact to perform an activity, sub-activity, or just a simple task. Using DSM, this table illustrates those interactions for a simple task at the lowest level of the composition. As the figure shows, skills are the main synthesizing mechanism of OCs, which utilize other organizational assets, knowledge and tools to perform a task. In order to provide an example, this table represents the analysis of component level design subactivity, which we had mentioned previously in the form domain. In this table, budget is one of the necessary inputs for the system to operate. Designers with optimization skills deploy their component knowledge and also design softwares to change the component specifications which are delivered from the system level design subactivity or systems operand into component design documents. To synthesize our conceptual framework, we need to link the two aforementioned domains to show how OCs perform their function as a whole system. For this purpose, we adopt IDEF0, which is a widely accepted function modeling standard in system science, as the basis for our conceptual framework. A typical IDEF0 model includes inputs or items that trigger the activity, controls which guide or regulate the activity, mechanisms or enablers that are systems, people, equipment used to perform the activity, or our microelements in form domain, and finally outputs which are results of performing the activity. Context diagram in IDEF0 modeling is a model of the function at the highest level of inputs, controls, outputs, and mechanisms. There could be another decomposition IDEF0 diagram which tries to investigate context diagrams in more details. In order to integrate form and function domain in our conceptual framework, we combined IDEF0 with DSM. In fact, we tried to capture the system's inputs and outputs, its elements and their interactions within the central box using a DSM while keeping controls and enablers outside. This figure represents our conceptual framework. As it shows, operand and other inputs enter the OC from the external environment. Knowledge, skills, and tools as general microelements of OCs are enablers of OC which interact to perform each of subactivities A1, A2, up to AN. Their interactions, which has been presented in previous tables, has been zoomed out and captured into cells labeled A1, A2, up to AN. Interactions in function domain between subactivities, has been reflected in the bigger table and results in changed operand and probably other byproducts. These transformations are controlled and constrained with the strategic and operational goals of the firm, which reflect all affecting factors in the OC's context. This paper tried to contribute to strategy literature through providing a better understanding of organizational capabilities. For this purpose, we proposed a new lens to look to OCs as systems. Using system-sized concepts and tools, we decomposed OCs to their microelements in both form and function domains and captured their interactions as well. Our final conceptual framework linked the two domains to show how the interaction in two domains integrates to perform specific activities as a whole system. Such an approach to organizational capabilities is new. Although a few of researchers has implicitly or explicitly mentioned OCs as systems, there are no try to operationalize such a metaphor. Thus, this work has set the agenda for a new strain which understands OCs and probably dynamic capabilities as systems. Our conceptual framework may have considerable managerial implications. It can be used as a framework for gap analysis in OCs and as a basis for improvement plans. Using this framework, we can identify the gap would be about the inputs to the system, or which of the activities or sub-activities or tasks, and also we can identify which of the microelements in form domain would cause this gap. With considering other microelements, it can be used as a guide for policy making as well. Using this framework in empirical settings seems also fruitful in the future works.
Thank you, Mahdi. Is that your last slide?
Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much.